Hey everyone, today's video I'm going to be talking about tanking. So today I'm going to be using some tanking solution. I'm using the Everbuild waterproofer tanking slurry. So I'm going to be using this on my walls in here. I'm going to be putting some all the way around this room, all 1 meter high. First things I've done to prepare is I've taken off all of the sockets and I'm going to tank all the way around them, and then I'm going to stick them back on with drywall later on. This is just to make sure that I don't breach the tanking slurry, so there isn't going to be a point where the water can come out. Right, one thing I did forget to mention was that you do need to brush down your walls before putting any of the tanking solution on. Whether this means damping the walls down and giving them all a brush before doing it, I definitely recommend doing that. But first things I'm going to do, now that it's all prepared, I'm going to mix it. So this tanking slurry says you need to put 4.5 litres in for each bag. So what I've done in my bucket, you can actually see there is some markings. So I've just got it to the roughly, I think it's between 4.2 and 4.5 litres. So I've got it to about 4.5 on mine. So I'm just going to mix it as usual, and then I'm going to start painting it on the walls. Right guys, so this stuff's now mixed. Basically just follow the instructions for whatever tanking slurry you're going to be using. One tip for actually when you are mixing is don't mix it all at once. So what I did there was I poured half of it in, got it all mixed up, and then I put more in after that. This is just a better way of getting it a better consistency all the way through. So this one is going to be fairly watery, but it has to be so that you can actually paint it on. Right guys, I'm just going to show you my technique for getting it on. It's nothing particularly special. All it is get a fairly decent brush. You brush it on, up and down, side to side, in between any of the gaps, and then just keep moving into it. So it's nothing special. But you want a fairly good brush because you want it to actually push in between all of the little holes and stuff. This stuff actually does spread fairly well, so if you do have any holes, you can just push it all the way in and it spreads nicely. As I said, even with like areas there where there was a tiny hole, just fill it in. So that's how I put it on. And remember, this is just the first coat. So I would say get it covered, the first coat, and the second coat goes on a lot thinner because you don't have to spread it as much. Yeah, that's the technique for tanking a wall. So with tanking, you normally do have to tank it down and you have to make sure that it goes on the floor, otherwise it will just come up the front. So that's why you have to tank to the floor and make sure you come out a bit. So I put the first coat on and now I've just made a start putting the second coat on now. So I'm just doing under the bay at the moment. So the second coat is always a lot thinner. So you still mix it exactly the same, but it just spreads so much easier than the first coat. So it's, as you can see here, it just spreads so much easier. So it just flies on the second coat. That's basically putting the tanking on. It's a simple method. What I'd say is make sure if you have any holes, try and fill them beforehand. Maybe with just some sand cement or something like that, just to make it go a bit further. So yeah, I just recommend trying to make it as easy as possible for you. A lot of people will think that this would actually be on a lot thicker, but it's not. It's actually on quite thin. It is quite a thin texture, and it's really good that you're not going to lose a huge amount of space either. So what I will be doing after this is all dried is I am not going to be screwing these sockets onto the wall. What I will be doing is I'm going to be putting some drywall behind them, and I'm going to stick them onto the wall. Right, the main reason for doing this is that I don't want to breach the damp course. If you drill any holes, that's going to be an area where some water can actually come through. So let's talk about why tanking solution is a good form of stopping water coming through. So the tanking slurry, it's like a waterproof membrane. So basically what you're painting on is the water is not going to go through that. But you've got to take certain things into account. The water has got to go somewhere else. So if you are stopping the water coming in, it has to go somewhere else. So it can either go back out or it gets diverted around, because water is and always will be an enemy, because it will always find a way. Right guys, so I thought I'd give you a bit of a backstory on why I'm actually tanking the walls in here. This is actually quite a long project, this job. This is the lounge in my house, and basically I've had some issues from when we first bought it. We had a couple of joists that had gone rotten, and when we first looked it up, it just looked like they'd rotted away. So I replaced them, and then a year later, I decided it was time for me to redo my lounge, and basically I lifted the floor up, and lo and behold, we had about 2 inches of water underneath. It wasn't all the way through because my house is on a hill, and basically the water was just like leaning up against the back walls. So we had to figure out what was happening. So I took all the flooring out, and basically we had to figure out what was going on. So we had to start from the outside first. All the water was going directly into the house. There was some soil around the front of it, so I had to get rid of all of that. And then I had to put a French drain in. So this was just to make sure that all of the water was going away into the garden. So this was quite a big project on itself, doing that. So after I'd done my French drain, I'd also tank the walls on the outside to try and stop any of the water going through, to make sure that when the water did get to it, it would go backwards and head towards the French drain, rather than what it was doing beforehand was all of the soil was actually holding all the moisture, and the water was just coming straight through all the brickwork, so the brickwork wasn't in the best of shapes. So that was part one of this little process that I had, was that I had to dig out the front of the house, put a French drain in, put a load of stone down, dig out into my garden so I had a soak away. Yeah, it was quite a lot of work. So after I'd done all of that, it was time to sort out the inside. And another issue I had was the air bricks. So the air brick from the outside, they were just going straight into the skirting. So they weren't going underneath at all. So there was no ventilation at all underneath. So there was a lot of stale water there, which had nowhere to go and no circulation to help the condensation leave out. So basically I had to drop a couple of the bricks down so that I could, so I had an airflow going through. And then I had to build some new pillars. So I couldn't have the wood going into the wall anymore because I wouldn't trust that. So after I'd bricked up where all the holes used to be, we decided to build some new pillars. I put some blackjack on top of it to try and stop any of the moisture coming through the wood. And then we put a new floor on, and we put some insulation underneath. Once I got to this stage, this was the stage now where I can actually start plastering. And for belt and braces, we decided that we were going to tank the top parts above the flooring so that if any moisture did want to come up, it would stop coming through. Right, so that is why I've had to tank my thing. I hope you found some of the information in this video useful and helpful. I drop videos every Tuesday on plastering. I do all sorts of videos, from tutorials to tool reviews to just plastering vlogs, just to see what I've got up to in the week. Right guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like these videos, please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.